those two numbers, in my opinion, are huge in determining if you're going to be profitable or not. You can see a day and night change in our business, better production, better sales, things like that. Not everyone's just going to go and find the absolute cheapest product. So the way you market yourself, the way you tell your story can go a really long way. So the chickens has gone way up this year, actually. So we're going to finish about 100,000 this year. The whole farm this year is going to gross around 1.75 million. And the vast majority, I would say 1.3 of that will be broiler chicken meat.
Hey, welcome to Farmer to Farmer. This is a brand new series here on the Heifer USA YouTube channel where we're hoping to learn from other successful farmers in the regenerative agriculture space about how to grow and scale a successful regenerative agriculture business. Our first guest today, I'm super excited about. It's Joe Koopsen from Three Rivers, Michigan. He runs Joe's Farm. And if you have seen any of our videos on our channel before, you've probably seen our live tour that we did on that video. If you haven't seen it yet, after this interview is over and you're finished watching this one, be sure to check out the tour we did at Joe's Farm back in July of 2022. And correct me if I'm wrong here, Joe, but you're raising 30,000 chickens a year, 3,500 turkeys on pasture, over 100 cows. Does that sound about right?
So the chickens has gone way up this year, actually. So we're going to finish about 100,000 this year.
What? Okay, well, that's really exciting. I can't wait to get into that to see how you are scaling your operation so quickly. Super exciting. So welcome to the channel. Welcome back, Joe Koopsen.
Yeah, thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you want to just introduce yourself, your farm. I know that you started farming when you were 12. You started your own farm when you were 15, but let's hear from you for those who don't know you, just a little bit about your background.
Yep. So my name's Joe Koopsen. And like you said, I started the farm in 2011 at the age of 15. Started selling at farmers markets. My mom had to drive me to farmers markets to sell eggs and stuff like that. And really developed a passion for farming, simultaneously a market for our products, which they came at the same time, which was great. Now we really were heavily focused on eggs when we first started the farm. We've since backed off of eggs quite a lot and are really focusing on broiler chickens for meat, along with turkeys, like you said, and beef cattle and a few other enterprises that we're starting this year.
Let's just jump right into it and talk about marketing and sales for your business. Where did it start out and how did it evolve over time?
So it started off, like I said, with farmers markets mostly, a few local farmers markets, and then a very small farm stand with fruits and vegetables and eggs. We had a farmers market actually inside a hospital, Bronson Hospital. It's a local hospital, and they were really making a transition to local food at that time, and approached me asking if we could produce eggs for them. But they knew a lot more of the legal side of things than I did, and we had to get a whole egg washing facility through the state of Michigan. And that was when I was 15 that they approached me. So it took a few years to get that going. And I believe when I was 18, I got the licensed facility and started raising chickens for eggs for them. Really, as far as marketing goes, for our wholesale specifically, it's been very relational. I go to lots of conferences, meet a lot of people, and I really like to get face to face with people and just sell our story, sell our similarities with. We work with a lot of other farms that sell direct to consumer, and I think we'll get into that some. So just constantly checking in with them, and really honestly just making the ask. Like, you'd be surprised how many people are actually looking for what you have, but a lot of people are just either too shy or think it's going to come off as rude to ask them, hey, if you're ever looking for another supplier for chicken, let me know. And just that question alone has gotten me so much business, because people are like, oh yeah, like we're always looking for a new chicken supplier or something like that. Or maybe at that point it doesn't actually solidify into anything, but then down the road they're like, hey, we're getting out of chicken ourselves, or our producer can't produce enough, or looking at bringing a second producer in. Then you're at least in their mind of you're interested in possibly producing chicken for somebody.
Yeah, so I think you really touched on something there that it's all about relationships. Is that right? That you're putting yourself out there and you're marketing to a degree, but it's
Mhm.
really about building those relationships when you
Yep.
do establish a connection. Let's talk a little bit about revenue streams on your farm to give our audience a better understanding of what you're selling or what you're growing and what you're selling. I
Yep.
mentioned the poultry products, but you tell me about different revenue streams that you use to cash flow your business.
Yeah. So broilers is by far our biggest revenue stream. It is pretty seasonal since we're in Michigan. We don't do broilers year round. The eggs that we still have about 700 hens. They are every week, which is really nice. As far as being paid and cash flow and things like that. Beef, we're doing. We sell at our farm store, but we also do like a bulk beef, like whole half quarter, stuff like that, which we do once a year. So that cash flow is not very good, but it's a big lump sum within about a 2 week period from those customers. So the whole farm this year is most likely going to gross around 1.75 million in total sales. And the vast majority, I would say, I don't have the exact number, but I would say probably 1.3 of that would be broiler chicken meat. We do have a on farm store as well, that we sell our products and other places products. That does about 5,000 a month, or so. And then we started shipping again, just recently over the past few months, and that's starting off. Just started again, so that's at like I think $2,000 or $3,000 a month. And then the rest outside of that, our whole half and quarter makes up about 50,000 a year, and then the rest of that is wholesale, whether it be to institutions, other farms, um, or retail.
What type of resources is it taking you to do that, in terms of land, labor? If you can talk about who your customers are that have allowed you to scale that quickly, I know our audience would love to know that.
Land has been we've been really blessed with good opportunities to buy land. We bought a farm. It was the farm that we never actually made it to when you were here. We bought that in 2019, and that really allowed us to scale the first time. And then just this past November, we bought the adjacent property, with about twice as much, the same amount as our current farm. So it allowed us to really increase our pastures a lot, which was awesome. Labor, again, we've been really blessed. We've got a pretty good amount of young guys, specifically from our church and our previous church, that want to work, and then they tell their friends, and it's actually been really good. We've had a few people kind of just apply, um, and we've got them working for us too. But a lot of our labor's been through people we know, or they've got someone who's interested that they know, and then they apply. So this year since we are seasonal, we keep about 3 to 4 year-round staff members, and then this summer we'll have between 10 and 12 employees through the summer.
The farm that I visited back in 2022,
Yep.
that land, was that family land? Did you buy that? How did you first get started on that farm?
Yep. So my parents bought. So that's actually the farm I'm sitting at right now. They bought this farm in 2014, and then I leased it from them for pretty much at cost. What it cost them. Um, and then we just recently bought this from them this past fall. Pretty much the same with the farm that we didn't make it to when you were here. It's about just over 100 acres. My dad bought that, and then I just bought that from him. So he had bought some things, and I was renting it from him, and now me and my wife bought all of that from them this past fall with the purchase of the new farm. So we kind of tied it all into one farm loan.
How have you financed your business as you've grown? Did you do it all debt free? Did you take on debt at any point, and if so, when?
Outside of mortgages, we didn't have any debt until last year. We got a line of credit. We really try to use it as little as possible, and I'd really like to get away from that line of credit. I know there's a lot of companies out there that run on line of credit. I just see it as kind of flushing some profits down the drain. Essentially, it allows us to grow, but it's not something I'd like to do continuously to actually operate our farm. but it's something we've done. And then we have mortgages on our farms.
But
So
but so it sounds like you've been able to just cash flow it just from your profit margins and reinvesting it back into
yes.
your business. Is that right?
Yeah. So we've reinvested a lot of our profits back into the farm. For the first like 7 years, 8 years, I didn't take any money out of the farm at all. So it started very
Hmm.
small, but I just put everything right back into it. And when I got married in 2018, we lived off of my wife's, or not 2018, I'm sorry, 2015. We lived off my wife's salary. So now she's a stay-at-home mom with our children. But at that point, I wasn't taking anything out of the farm. It started very slow, but reinvest those profits right back in, and it's kind of a snowball effect from there.
Awesome. So you started out with one full time off farm income while
Mhm.
you farmed full time on the farm, but
Yep.
didn't take in any paychecks, and you did that for 7 years roughly.
Yeah. Yep. And I also did some odd end jobs. So I worked. One of my uncles is a roofer, and my other uncle and my dad own a construction business. So I would do some side stuff, but we never
Yeah.
took anything from the farm for a long time. Yeah.
As it seems like we all do these days, right? We always
Yeah.
got some type of side project going on, or
Yeah.
ways
Exactly.
to hustle and make a little extra money. But that I think that's a really valuable lesson learned for our audience or anybody who's thinking about getting into the business is, and this is what I do in my own
Mhm.
businesses that I run is, you know, to pay myself as little as possible, take as little money out of it, and just reinvest it back into your business to continue to grow it as quickly as possible, so that you can get to that point that you're at now, where you're paying for your lifestyle out of the
Mhm.
business. Your wife's a stay at home mom;
Yep.
she's not working anymore, and that's the dream that most people are trying to get to. I feel like,
Yep.
um, and you've done it as fast as you can by taking that route.
Yeah. And when you're in it, when you're not taking money out of it, it's a big sacrifice. And if you can delay that, you know, gratification essentially, and put off, taking money out of your business, it's gonna reap rewards down the line, a lot.
Where did you find yourself investing your profits back into the business? Was it equipment and infrastructure? Was it land? Was it marketing? Was it all of the above? How are you doing that?
Mostly input costs, so feed, processing, chicks, and then also equipment. Yeah.
Have you found any ways to be more efficient or save money with those input costs, specifically like feed?
Yeah. So feed, we track two numbers very closely when it comes to production, and that's feed conversion rate. So how many pounds of feed it takes to make 1 pound of chicken meat, essentially, and then our mortality rate. So the mortality rate directly affects the feed conversion rate, because if you lose a bird at 6 weeks old, well, it's eating a lot of feed, and you're tracking the feed for the whole batch. So the feed conversion rate's not going to be as good. Um, and those two numbers, in my opinion, are huge in determining if you're going to be profitable or not. If you're, if you go out to the field and you see there's just spilt feed everywhere, um, they're not eating it or something, or they're sorting through it, or people are spilling bags of feed. Well, that feed is, the feed conversion rate is going to be really bad, because you're just wasting a bunch of feed, and the feed's expensive. If you have super high mortality rates, then your costs are just your input costs or cost of goods sold is just going to be so much higher than if you keep those numbers low as possible.
The customers that
Mm.
you've acquired that have allowed you to scale your business from, because you were just doing 30,000 broilers last year, is that right?
Yep.
And
Yeah,
so
last
this
year,
year
35. Yep.
you're tripling your production. That's no small feat.
Yep.
Let's talk about that. Like, how are you able to do that? Where's your customer base for growing that much?
Yep. So we're growing with our current customers, which are like Primal Pastures, White Oak Pastures, Apsey Farms. Man, I don't want to leave anybody out, but Bronson
Seven.
Hospital.
Are you still selling the Seven Sons?
So we were selling turkeys to Seven Sons, and then that's one of our new customers. They're now going to be buying chicken from us also.
Nice.
They've kind of put together a co-op of different growers, and we're just one of maybe 4 or 5 different broiler growers for them. We've also brought on Rebel Pastures, which they're here in Michigan also. Um, and then, like I said, growing with, because all these farms that we're producing for are also growing themselves. So
Mhm.
a lot of their numbers are going up simultaneously. So we can grow as they grow. And then we've got some wholesale, some other smaller farms like Third Day Farms here locally. that are taking some. Our farm store is growing more. Our online sales are growing some. So it's kind of just a catch-all as far as, but the majority of it is our new customers like Seven Sons and Rebel Pastures and stuff like that.
Awesome. So a lot of B2B, like business to business sales, but you are doing some direct to consumer stuff also.
Yep.
But okay.
I would say it's pretty much like 98% B2B. But we are trying to grow that direct consumer more for resilient reasons than anything, just because you're not gonna, one of our big wholesale customers could walk away or say they don't need anything this year or whatever. Well, the chances of you losing a big portion of your direct consumer if it's spread over 100 different customers isn't super likely.
What made you kind of make that jump and to say, I'm going to triple my production? And did you cash flow that out of savings?
Yeah, out of savings. So we have always let demand determine growth, which I think is actually a perception that, or not perception, but something that people think farms do. But a lot of times farms grow things on speculation, just assuming they're going to be able to sell it, which is why people get in really hot water with overproducing. Then they've got a bunch of chicken in the freezer and they're paying storage fees and they don't know where they're going to go with it. We allow our it's around somewhere between January and March. We try to get everybody locked into how many birds they're going to need this year. And it, like with Seven Sons, we started talking to them in the fall because they were going to add so many. And then once we've got those numbers, then we can sort out where, how many batches we need, what batches are going to who, but allowing the demand to grow or to push the growth, not grow and then try to find the demand.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a question so many have on their minds is, which comes first, the chicken or the egg, or in this case, the supply or the demand. And it sounds like you're letting demand drive your supply, and I think that's probably a really smart way to do it.
Yep.
And all indicators are that you've had very great receptivity, from your customers to what you're doing. I mean, starting out growing. What was your first batch of chickens? Do you remember how many you had?
First batch was 50.
So starting out with 50 to, probably just selling them to your friends and family, anybody that would buy them and consuming them in your own home to, over $1 million in revenue a year, 100,000 birds, multiple customers. So I think that's a really great, testimonial for anybody who's watching this video that, is thinking about maybe getting into this space. How do you feel about the pastured poultry market today and into the future?
I think it's really good right now. Pastured poultry, there's a huge demand for it, and there's been a bunch of greenwashing in pastured poultry. And we're starting to see some of those greenwashing companies either go out of business or people are starting to see through the greenwashing. There's been a lot more exposure with like White Oaks going on Joe Rogan talking about it. The demand is definitely there. It's just if you can get in the right channels. So different producers are going to have different niches that they are really good at. For example, like Pasture Bird, they're really investing heavily into retail and doing a fresh pasture raised chicken. That's not our avenue. We're doing frozen and more business to business, like farms that are sending it directly to people's homes. And it sounds crazy, but those are two way different businesses. When you start going retail into grocery stores, especially fresh, you've got like a 10-day window to get it from processed to like the custom, like end consumer's refrigerator. So it's very, very logistically challenging.
I want to talk a little bit about, just more business acumen related things, right? So what do you do to improve your business acumen skills? Like where do you learn? Where do you draw inspiration and information? And then how do you keep track of it all?
So as far as learning goes, I'm a big podcast guy. And I think that's actually a really good point, that when you're trying to grow a farming business, business YouTube videos, business podcasts, business books are probably more beneficial than farming practices books. As much as we all love to hear, how can we produce something better? How can we improve our soils? Those are all super important things. But to actually keep the business viable, having the skill set to grow a business or to sustain a business or to like cash flow, profitability, you can't improve your soils if you're out of business. Um, so I think that's very important. I turn to podcasts mostly because I can just listen to them. Um, but uh, but there are a few good books I'd recommend. E-Myth by Michael Gerber, I believe. That one helped me a lot. And then there's also a book, it's business and farming. It's called Lean Farm. I really like that book also.
What about keeping track of it all, accounting and bookkeeping and numbers? It's such an important part of a business to know where your revenues are coming from, where they're going.
Yep.
How do you manage all of that?
Yep. So like I mentioned earlier, my dad and uncle owned their own construction business. And one of the biggest things I learned from my dad very early on was have an accountant, because our accountant has saved us so much in taxes and in understanding our numbers. So I have an accountant for tax purposes and for payroll and things like that. Um, I do something I'm trying to get better at is keeping track of our numbers a little bit better. I've always been really had a great time running numbers, but keeping track of what our actual costs and input costs are, not just what we assume they're going to be, but what they actually are. I definitely need to get better at. My brother-in-law, who joined the farm last year, is much more computer savvy than I am, and he started to create a lot of Google Workspace, so a lot of sheets and plans and things that we can. So we've got a financial plan now that we didn't have before. We can kind of estimate our costs, when we're going to need them, when cash flow's coming in, things like that. That's been really helpful. So we know, around, you're not going to have any money coming in for a certain amount of time, and then when it
Yeah.
does start coming in, it's not going to be very much. So we can't spend something here. We need to put that capital expenditure later on when we're going to have better cash flow. Um, that's really helped us a lot as far as being able to determine when money's coming in, when money's going out.
Yeah, it's such an important part of running a business, and I think you really just said it very well earlier that as much as we love planting and growing and being out in the sunshine, at the end of the day, if you want to do this for real and not just to feed yourself or your neighbors, which is fine, but if you want to
Mhm.
do this as a business and make a living at it, you have to be business minded first and farmer minded second, or like production minded second. So I think you
Yep.
said it really, really well there. Um, and from my own experience, investing early on in a relationship and spending that extra money with a CPA or an accountant or whoever, it felt intimidating before you do it, but then once you do it, you're like, oh, what a breath of fresh air! This is so
Yes,
great.
it is.
Yeah,
Yeah, our accountant CPA has really helped me understand how to, you know, well, not just taxes, but how to look at a financial statement and things like that. And he knows so many things that I would never have thought of as far as like deductions. I say he pays for himself all the time. Like, he's saved us so
yeah.
much in taxes because there's a lot of farms can write off a lot of things that we just don't think about. But they are directly business related, so it's more than legal to write those things off.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you don't have to be the expert, right? You just
Right.
find the people who are experts, and
Yep.
again, build that relationship with them. Um,
Yes.
but you do have to do your part, right? You have to keep
Mhm.
some records. You have to input data as appropriate. Like, where do you find yourself doing that, and what kind of information are you recording?
Yep. So we're recording. Obviously, all of our sales and invoices are we do through QuickBooks. Um, we need to get a little bit better at having expenses go through QuickBooks. But we've started, like I said, on Google Worksheets. Started to fill out a lot of forms for that. We keep, we organize our receipts and stuff like that, and go through credit card statements. Um, that's pretty much where we're collecting a lot of the data. That is honestly, I'll be completely honest. The bookkeeping side of things is something we either need to hire somebody soon to part-time, just come and do some record keeping and books, or I need to learn to do them a little bit better, because it is now getting to the point where there's a lot of moving pieces and a lot of invoices and a lot of receipts and stuff like that, that if they're not organized correctly and they're not put
Yeah.
into a program, things can get away from you pretty quickly.
Yeah, when you're doing it on a smaller, when you're not doing $1 million in revenue a year, it's a little bit easier to keep track of
Mhm.
your receipts and your invoices and make sure they go in the right Google Drive folder or wherever you store your stuff. But I think at the scale you're getting to now, it totally would make sense to think about maybe bringing on a little bit of that capacity on your team internally.
Yep.
Let's talk about divisions of labor for your
Okay.
business,
Mhm.
both production and just business management. Um, where, where are you at right now? Maybe where did you start? Who did you hire first?
Yep.
And then how did you change over time?
Yeah. So when I first got started, it was me and people that I could just get to come help me do things. My dad helped out a lot. My mom helped out a lot. Um, when I got married, my wife helped out a lot. But my first actual hire was a young guy, pretty much just for production purposes. Um, all of our hires have been production oriented until last year, when my brother-in-law joined the team as our COO. So now he's taking over a lot of the production stuff, and my sister, who he's married to, is doing a lot of the direct consumer marketing and sales side of things also. And we also have egg washing crew, so they come in, wash eggs, things like that. Otherwise, everyone else is production right now. But like we just discussed with a bookkeeper, that's the production's probably going to become less of a percentage, at least, of our labor as we get more of the office type admin side of things
Yeah.
rolling.
Have you had any mentors along the way when it comes to building and growing your business? Who to hire first, and have you had any mentors in your business?
I've had a lot of mentors. My dad's been a big help, coming from owning his own business and things like that. They didn't actually have any employees in their construction business. They subcontracted everything out. So the employee side of things, me and my COO, my brother-in-law Jordan, we've kind of been discussing like who's our next hire and just trying to figure out our own. I don't really have anyone specifically that's been like, this is who you need to have as your next hire. I've talked to some other people, like all the brothers at Seven Sons, for guidance on. I went to a class that they had about it wasn't specifically about hiring, but that was a big part of it, was different people to hire and stuff like that. And talk to other farms who are in similar situations and who they would hire next. Like, where these are our sticking points. These are some issues we have. Who would you know, is our next hire this position or this position? Because we can't afford you can't afford both right now. So which one would you choose, kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, again, back to relationships,
Hmm.
community, and it sounds like you're working with family quite a bit. That's
Yeah.
always, it's always as rewarding as it is challenging sometimes, I know, but just from my experience.
Yep.
Um, so, I mean, that's great that you're relying on your community. What about professional networks? And then I know you're a board member of APA. Maybe tell folks about what that
Yep.
is and how that's played a role in your business as well.
Yeah, I was just gonna say APA is a huge resource. So for you, if anyone doesn't know what APA stands for, it's American Pastured Poultry Producers Association. I am on the board, and it's just a collective group of people producing pastured poultry, and it's a great resource. You can ask questions and get lots of different feedback and lots of different opinions. There's a conference every year, and then there's some even live stream type things and a call every month where you can ask experts who have you know been in your shoes and are now 2 or 3 steps ahead of you, um, what they did in this situation or what they would do in this situation, which has been very helpful. That helped me get started a lot. It's pretty obvious to tell that once I joined APA, I'm not saying this is going to happen for everyone that joins APA, but since I am a relationship sales person, the relationships that came with APA, just you can see a day and night change in our business, and better production, better sales, things like that. Um, and then I'm a Farm Bureau member. So I think there is value in having local, because not everyone's local in APA. It's all over the United States. Having a local farming community, I think, is very important, even though the majority of them are commodity, like vast majority are commodity farmers. Um, there's still a lot of like a lot of resources we can all use together. So, we're looking for someone to plant our pastures. Well, they're the ones that are going to plant it because they've got the big equipment and we don't have anything. So having those relationships is also very important, and it's more localized. So they're facing the same weather issues that you're facing, whereas someone in, let's say, Vermont is not the same weather that we're having here. And what, obviously, if you're a farmer, the weather is super crucial to our business.
Awesome. No, that's great. That's great advice. Professional networks, both national and local. Again, building those relationships. What is the future that you see for your business, and
Yep.
what strategies are you going to use to get to do it?
Yeah. So the future for our farm, um, it's always changing, but what it's looking like right now is we're trying to utilize the land that we have. So not all the land we own is pasture. So we're looking at adding either like forest raised pork or goat goat meat or something along those lines to be able to utilize our woods. Something that we're adding this year that we're really excited about, or at least I'm really excited about, is doing pastured rabbits.
Nice.
That's going to be really interesting. It's going to be cool. We're actually using one of our chicken, mobile range coops. We're going to put some fencing on the sides so they can't dig out, essentially, or we're hoping they can't dig out. And we're going to try to produce around 1,200 pasture raised rabbits this year, which is going to be
That's
really
exciting.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So always innovating, always trying some new ideas and
Yep.
trying something different.
And then, like I said, utilizing our current customer base. Like a lot of, like if you ask your customers, like, are there any other products you're looking for? Would you guys entertain trying to sell this if we raise this for you? It's not always about necessarily going out and finding a brand new customer, but seeing how you can develop the relationship and produce more for the customers you have.
How do you get customer feedback, and also I'll follow up. How do you set your prices?
Yep. So the feedback is really just, again, it's a conversation. So I'll email somebody. Like for rabbit, we're specifically raising them for white oak pastures. So I email Jenny and say, hey, like, I'd really love to try pastured rabbits. I see you guys have sold it in the past. Is that something you guys might be interested in? And then she either says, in this case, she said, yeah, we'd definitely be interested. That'd be awesome. Let's try it. Or they say, oh, we discontinued that for this, and this reason. We're not really interested in doing that again. Or we've got plenty of supply. We don't need it. Whatever it is. So that's really how that kind of goes. I just throw an idea out there to somebody, and if it sticks, it sticks, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. And then what was the second part of the question?
What was the second part of the question? I believe it was setting your prices.
Setting your prices, yeah. So that is huge, especially for starting your farm. I see it all the time on Facebook groups, and it just drives me nuts because people say like, "Oh, what's the going rate for beef?" or "What's the going rate for a dozen eggs?" And you will get so burned because if you look at the comments, the eggs are anywhere from $2 to $12 a dozen. So how are you supposed to go off any of that information, on how you should price your eggs? We determine our price by calculating all of our costs. I even add in like a certain amount for like electricity, any other, like if you're on city water, then I would put in water or something along those lines. Total all that up and then just add on the profit margin that you would desire to have, I guess, and then divide by however many pounds. So when we figure out the price of a broiler chicken, I almost always price it as a 4-pound whole chicken. So if we're at a this gets a little technical, but if we're at a 3-pound conversion rate or a 3-to-1 conversion rate, meaning we put 3 pounds of feed per 1 pound of meat. If it's a 4-pound chicken, then it's 12 pounds of feed that we're putting into it. If I know our feed costs are 25 cents a pound, well, then we've got 12 times 0.25, and that's how much our feed price is. Then our chick price, and then our processing price, and our labor, and then just all that totaled up. Plus, you might want to add in a little bit for mortality. So if you take that entire thing and multiply it by 1 point, well, it wouldn't. Most likely, you're not going to lose them all the last day right before processing. So if you added, you know, 10% or something along those, not 10%, it'd be like 1%, I guess, essentially is kind of how we do it. But total that all up. And then if you want to make it a percentage, so you're making 30% margin, then add a percentage. Or a lot of people do like a $5 per chicken, or, it kind of depends too. If we do two different feed programs, we do a non-GMO and a corn-free, soy-free. Well, the corn-free, soy-free feed is way more expensive. And there's a lot more risk to that, because if that chicken dies 2 days before we take it to the processor, well, we've got a lot more costs wrapped up. So we have to cover that risk. So the calculations are a little bit different. When you start getting into cuts of meat, it can be very difficult. We have said no to a lot of other relatively large customers, especially in the restaurant business or restaurant side of things, because all they want is a chicken breast, a boneless, skinless chicken breast. Well, we can't make any money if we just sell a boneless, skinless chicken breast. So we require our customers to take the whole bird, from the back to the feet to the organs to the skin, to the boneless, skinless breast, thighs, drumsticks, wings, everything. And then we can not easily, but relatively easily determine what our profit margin would be over the whole bird, and break it down per cut and stuff like that.
Yeah. So the takeaway I get there is, rather than just seeing what your competitors are doing or asking people online, or even just looking around, actually look inside your business and look at your input costs, is what you said, and then look at the percentage margin you would like to make on top of that, and use those numbers. Again, going back to the importance of record keeping, collecting data on your business, and use those numbers to help determine the best price you can afford to offer to your customers at the end of the day.
Yep. We don't look at our competition. I mean, I'm not even really sure who our competition would be. If our competition is other like small pastured poultry producers, well, then it is what it is. If it's like, a free range free range chicken inside Walmart, well, I don't really think they're our competition either. So I don't think about it too much of what somebody else is charging. Our customer, for example, if I say, our chicken is this amount, and that's good for us and that's good for them, then I really don't care what anybody else is charging. Yeah.
Yeah, it's because, to reiterate, most of your customers are those B2B relationships, those other businesses. And so I guess your competition would be maybe other farms that they might actually buy from. And so at the end of the day, it's more about like, what would that customer, what's worth it to them, so they can still get some margin on top of it as the kind of like the middle person.
And how it relates to like a farmer's market, because we used to sell at a few farmers markets, we don't anymore. But our eggs were like $2, I think, more than a few other people at the farmers market, and we still sold out and sold way more than they did, because again, it's coming back to quality, consistency, relationships. People, not everyone's just going to go and find the absolute cheapest product. So the way you market yourself, the way you tell your story, can go a really long way.
What advice would you have for other new or beginning, or the person who's just sitting here watching this thinking, man, I would love to be a farmer. I would love to raise animals or livestock or vegetables, and take care of the earth, my family, my neighbors, and make a living. What advice would you give to that person who's just thinking about getting started, or maybe trying to scale?
Yep. So for just getting started, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier. If you can just keep working your job that you have right now, assuming you have a job of some sort or some type of money coming in, and start on the side to get a proof of concept that there is a market for your products, and that you actually have a passion for raising, animals or growing produce or whatever, instead of just jumping all in and discovering, oh, there's no market, and now you're not making any money. It takes so much pressure off the farm itself if you have income coming in to pay for your lifestyle and your family and your basic needs. And then on top of that, then you can start farming, evenings or weekends or whatever it is. But then once you've got proof of concept, you've got to just determine, at what point can I replace my salary essentially and jump in full time. And that looks different for everybody. But there's so much less strain on the farm if you can if you can bring in income elsewhere at first, and and lock it down that you know what you're doing at least a little bit more than just starting out. For scaling, that's a little bit more tough to answer. I would say, um, my advice for scaling would be don't scale beyond what the market can take. So if you don't, on I wouldn't scale on speculation personally. Um, Go find the customer and then get something in writing that they are, there's, a handshake used to mean a lot, but it doesn't mean much anymore. So, getting something in writing that this is what they want and this is what they're willing to pay, um, is what I would suggest. Not just taking something. People will, especially. I don't. I keep picking on chefs. I really love chefs and I love good food, but they're notorious for, oh, we'll take 200 chickens a week. Just bring them to us. We'll get them every week. Well, maybe that's what the menu for that 2-month period called for, was 200 chickens a week. But then the menu changes, and now there's not even chicken on the menu or something, or it's a different cut of chicken, or that chef leaves and goes somewhere else, and now they're switching up their whole program. So getting something in writing and being realistic with those people, and your customers and yourself, can go a really long way. So you can scale production all you want, but if you can't sell that product, you're going to go out of business and then you're going to have nothing. So, scaling smart and, I don't want to say slow because it's all relative to what you can handle and what your farm can handle and what your customers want. But growing strategically and knowing that you're going to be able to sell the product.
Yeah, no, I think that's great advice. So many people, when they're first getting into it, myself included, they think, I got to find the customers myself. I got to sell direct to consumer. I got to go out there and like market my product and do all this stuff and be a farmer and run a business. But it's not necessarily that way.
Hmm.
You're a good, I think, a good flip side to that coin where you're building a lot of these business to business relationships. And
Yep.
do you think that there is as much opportunity like that out there as, or as there are like direct to consumer? Would you urge people to try to do direct to consumer, or do you think, that there's more opportunity for small scale farmers to do B2B relationships?
I think there's definitely, um, pros and cons to both, and that both of them are, um, there's still demand in both, avenues. I am shocked how I'll do Google searches for, uh, beef shipped right to your door companies, or I try all these different keywords, but every day I'm shocked on how many farms that I've never heard of that are shipping direct to consumer. That either there's a huge market out there, or a huge industry of direct to consumer shipped beef, and that's all they do is just ship beef. So there's a huge market out there for them to eventually sell chicken, and eventually sell pork, or eventually sell turkey or whatever. And it seems like there's a new one of those every day that I find. I think if you're not doing the direct consumer, there's somebody else starting who is doing the direct consumer, and they don't want to necessarily produce everything. That you can help them produce it and not actually be the one, shipping it to their house, essentially. But there is a growing market for, customers, the end consumer, who want to buy direct from a farm they trust. Um, so I think there's definitely pros and cons, and there's definitely, room for both sectors to grow for sure.
Nice. Well, that's so exciting. I know, for just my own perspective, and being an advocate and passionate about seeing regenerative agriculture grow in the United States, and to hear it from you, from your perspective, that there's good demand out there. It's really
Yep.
exciting. Such a fascinating conversation, Joe. I could go on for hours talking with you about this. But for the sake of our audience's, time, is there anything that we didn't cover that you would like to talk about?
I don't think so. I think there's you're just always going to have to continuingly learn new things, when it comes to business. Like, now I'm really focusing on like leadership and farm and business structure and, employee growth. Like, there's just always something new to learn. So just make sure that you're always willing. Never assume you just know it all, because you definitely don't. And you definitely find those people out there, and they struggle to, keep employees because they think they know it all, um, and run a successful business. So being humble in that, and then just knowing your numbers is also very important.
Yeah. Well, hopefully this video and these series can be an opportunity for you watching it to always be learning, to learn from other farmers. If you like this type of content, please hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment below to let us know that you'd like to see more stuff like this. And if you want to hear more from Joe Koopsen or learn more about his farm, Joe, where can people find you online?
Yep. So our website is joesfarm.us. Um, there's some sections in there for farmers, and then there's obviously sections in there for people who want to buy meat directly from us. And then our Instagram is joesfarm.us. Facebook is Joe's Farm, I believe. And then on our website, if you want to continually get updates from our farm, you can sign up for our newsletter right there also.
Awesome. Yeah. And if you guys haven't seen the video that on our channel, the tour of Joe Koopsen's farm, we'll link that right above or somewhere on this video in the description down below for sure. So you can go watch that, check it out. Joe, thank you so much for your time and the conversation. Absolutely. This has been awesome. Yeah, just look forward to seeing what you do in 2 years from now.
Awesome. Thanks, Tyler. I appreciate it.
All right. Take care.
Now that you've learned Joe Koopsen's strategies for successfully scaling a farm, check out his poultry production practices in this immersive farm tour, or join Christine Hernandez for an in-depth look at multi-species livestock management right here at Heifer Ranch.